Hello and welcome back to The Flash, Up to Speed with Wally West. My name is Javi Trujillo and I am the Flash fan. Today we're going to be talking about The Flash number 8 from 1987. Before we get into that, just a few quick notes. Mark Waid is back on The Flash with Christopher Cantwell, and there are two issues in. It's tied into DCKO. If you're not reading that book, it's a lot of fun. Absolute Flash is also picking up speed as we're getting to see more of Wally and the Rogues, or his version of the Rogues, and the Thawns are mixed in as well. We'll be talking about those in separate episodes. I'm going to do a big wrap up of the first few arcs and then maybe go back to a monthly rotation with that, weaving it in with the main DC universe. And over one of the recent Comic Cons, it might have been New York, I don't remember. Obviously, the McFarlane Toy license is their deal with DC is expiring soon, and one of the last figures we're going to get, they hinted at, was a Wally West from. They're calling it the JLA New World Order arc. Basically, it's '90s Wally in his shiny suit that debuts in the Flash 50. The closest we've gotten to McFarlane doing a figure like that was the JLU Task Force video game adaptation figures. And that Wally is pretty much perfect. There's a review for it up on the channel, um, or at least I posted about it on Instagram. But that figure is practically perfect for that era, except for the fact that it's like 16-bit colorization on some parts. So if they just take that mold, give it like a shiny red sheen, some gold boots, like it's a perfect Flash figure. Definitely one I've been looking forward to. So uh, that's kind of our December right now. We're barreling into 2026. Exciting things to come. But before we reach those milestones in the future, today we're going to be talking about The Flash number 8. This is episode 11, talking about The Flash number 8. It was released October 6th, 1987, per Mike's Amazing World of DC Comics. It was cover dated January of 88. The credits are as follows. We have Mike Barron, writer, Jackson Geis, penciler, Larry Malstead, inker, Steve Haney, letterer, Michelle Wolfman, colorist, and Mike Gold, editor. And of course, Wally West was created by John Broome and Carmine Infantino. So, getting you up to speed. It's Millennium, week 1. But before we get to that, Wally has to get out of his current predicament from last issue. And a quick side note here, there's a blurb that says, read this week's issue of Millennium before reading this story. But I didn't do that. In fact, I've never read it. So, and I happen to get along with this story just fine. So suck it, editor's note. Also, I thought about it. I'm like, well, maybe I should read Millennium since we cross over with it a few times. It has some pretty big ramifications in this issue, but it is one of the few big crossovers that is not on DC Universe Infinite. So I guess you would have to go to your back issue bins. There had to have been a trade at some point, but I can't think of it. It would be heading to your comic shop and looking for those issues if you want to read them. Anyways, Blue Trinity has caught up to the Flash and Red Trinity and introduced themselves as Bolslaw Uminsky, Gregor Gregorovich, and Christina. I'm so sorry I butchered those names. Anyways, they're bragging about how they can run 700 miles an hour. They demand that Flash and his compatriots come with them, which obviously that's a hard pass. Barron uses Wally's narration to get the reader up to speed with the situation, recapping recent events as he fights, and it's a great way. Wally's narration's always been a great way not only to get his point of view across, but if this is your first time picking up the Flash, you know what's going on through this narration. Eventually, Blue Trinity turns tail and runs, and the Finnish Border Patrol shows up, and they have a message for the Flash from the GLC, the Green Lantern Corps. Wally bemoans that he can never finish anything before something new pops up. And speaking of which, a purple haze falls over him, and he and most of Red Trinity pass out from all the exertion. While Wally gets whisked away to the GL Citadel, Red Trinity gets taken to Syracuse University Hospital, with Jerry's condition deteriorating. Tina goes with Doctors Orloff and Bortz. Apparently, Dr. Orloff has a chemical that reverses the effects caused by the steroids. Fortunately for Tina and Jerry. Wally wakes up at the Citadel, and Black Canary is there to give him something to eat and bring him up to speed. Before long, all the heroes have gathered, and we are told about the 10 would be immortals and how they would have to be protected and saved. So, long story short, before the Guardians created the Green Lantern Corps, they made the Manhunters, which are these androids that after half a billion years turn on them. So, after the Guardians strip them of their powers, the Manhunters begin to experiment on themselves to reacquire what they've lost. Along the way, they gathered human acolytes and embedded them into society and close to certain heroes. How they knew who was going to be a hero in the future, I'm not entirely sure. This was a pretty big deal in the Superman books at the time, especially with how they embedded themselves in Smallville. But how they know who is going to be a hero down the road, I have no idea. But the Manhunters basically want to stop these 10 people from becoming the new Guardians. So the heroes get sent on their various ways, and Baron uses Wally's narration to share his thoughts and feelings on the matter, particularly when it comes to financial assistance. And his musings get interrupted when he arrives home to find his father waiting for him alone. So this is one of those things where, again, Baron is bringing up the fact that this is on Wally's mind. He's a millionaire at this point still, but he's still thinking about like putting my life on the line. He doesn't say this example, but firefighters, police, the military, they all get paid for what they do. They have health insurance. And here Wally's thinking about, I don't have insurance, which kind of is a nice callback to the first issue when he's helping the hospital and he wants medical insurance because while he has superpowers, it's really taxing on him and there's a cost that gets incurred with that. So it gets brought up again. Wally arrives home to find his father waiting there, and here's where Baron drops the bomb. Wally's dad is a manhunter agent who is assigned to marry Wally's mom. Oh, and by the way, he just had her killed just now, too. Um, so he's here to break the news to Wally. But the bright side is that he's doing this for Wally and wants them to be closer because there's no better way to get closer to your son than by killing their other parent so you can have all the attention. Obviously, Wally is beside himself with grief. The art really sells that. Uh, we get to see the grief-stricken Wally. It can't get any worse, and Wally threatens to call the cops. Rudy sics Blue Trinity on his son. So it turns out they didn't retreat without reason during their first encounter earlier in this issue, and they retaliate now with a vengeance. And Geist just absolutely crushes it with this two-page spread. The issue's title gets repeated again, Purple Haze, and Wally is beaten into a daze. Now, Rudy goes on and on about how ungrateful Wally is and tells Blue Trinity they're going to wait for a VTOL to extract them after dark. And just when Blue Trinity is getting insubordinate, saying they will go to this sub that they have waiting for them, Red Trinity crashes in for rescue. Yes, it's another awesome two-page splash from Geist, which makes for a nice bit of symmetry with the few pages we had earlier. Oh, and hey, another Purple Haze reference. So if I didn't mention at the top, this issue is called Purple Haze, which obviously, the first thing I think of is Jimi Hendrix. But you have the Flash in red, you have Red Trinity who's red and white, and your Blue Trinity is blue and white. I would imagine if you're seeing these superpowered people going back and forth fighting each other, the colors are going to blur. It's going to look like a purple haze. In addition to the fact, I think there's an aspect too of Wally getting, like maybe his blood sugar's getting low because he's been using the speed and not eating, and things are starting to be hazy because of that. So that could also be the time, because you would think that with his superpower, he would be able to see everyone moving at that speed. And with him feeling weaker, maybe his vision's getting blurry and they're looking like a purple haze. Fight, fight, fight. Blue Trinity definitely runs with their tail between their legs this time, and Red Trinity fills Wally in on Jerry's treatment and Tina's wishes to come back to Wally once Jerry stabilizes a bit more in a few days. So Bebek volunteers to go to Walmart to get a shortwave radio so Flash can get back in touch with the other heroes. Meanwhile, the boys chow down on what food there is at the mansion, and they make a deal about, we're in America, all night Walmart's so great. Like it's kind of funny. Their meal gets interrupted by the police, who come to tell Wally that his mom has been trying to reach him. What the what? Yeah. So she's not dead. Uh, Rudy thought she was, but she's not. So a flabbergasted Wally calls his mom, who tells him that his father is dead. So you've got Rudy saying that she's dead. She's saying that Rudy's dead. Who's who's right here? Is Mama dupe? Who knows? Because it's to be continued in Millennium in the Flash #9. So I mean, this was a fun issue. We get so much established here, and I don't even know where to start. Like we definitely get to see more of Christina, and like I mentioned in past episodes, she's going to become a bit of a recurring character around the early '90s, like when the TV show was on, and then she pops up sporadically across the decades since then. Red Trinity also, they become someone else. Future, they make a different team name down the road, um, different logos too, but still kind of the same suits. So we get to see more of them, why they're in the United States and why they decide to stay there. And then of course we get to the millennium of it all. Yeah, it's pretty complicated. The twists are fun between Rudy and Wally's mom, whose name escapes me now for some reason. Mary West. Mary West, Wally's mom. Can't believe I forgot that. Um, so while we don't get a lot of Mary, we do get a lot of Rudy in this issue, which when Wade gets to his Flash year one, the first Flash year one, we definitely see more of Wally and Rudy's relationship. And this whole bit about the Manhunters and the Millennium thing, I Wade definitely doesn't mention it, and I don't remember when it gets dropped or if it gets retconned, or we just like, hey, this is a thing that happened, we ignore it, or even if this Rudy is really the real Rudy, he could be a robot. There is a Batman, one of the Batman tie-ins with Jim Aparo art, where Commissioner Gordon is an android Manhunter, but it's not the real Commissioner Gordon. It's a replacement. So I don't remember if that's Rudy's fate. I'm going to rediscover this along with the rest of you doing this show. But whether or not this is the authentic Rudy West, I mean, we do get some really good um, relationship things established in terms of how he feels about Wally, how Wally feels about his dad, and that's stuff that gets played on for years to come in the book. And Wally's relationship with Barry. And there's a moment where Rudy calls or makes reference to Wally being Kid Flash, and he it seems like he gets a little petulant. He's like, "I'm the Flash now," and he's like, "Yeah, yeah, it's just hard for me to believe that Barry's gone." And I feel like there's you don't really see it too much in the letters page, and obviously the internet wasn't a thing. But like, I have to wonder if there was some kind of outrage back then of Wally's Kid Flash. He's not the Flash. Whether or not that was an inspiration, like it still comes across really well here. Of this is the struggle that Wally's dealing with, is trying to live up to this impossibly high standard, and you see why Wally would idolize Barry the way he did, and you get a glimpse of what his home life was like, and how Rudy's saying how ungrateful he is, um, and how little he feels because of how special his son is, and he's not. It's kind of like the whole Jonah Jameson Spider-Man dynamic. Like there's an issue back in the Ditko days where he's saying he's really hates Spider-Man, not because of anything he's done. He's just jealous that he has all this power and does great things with it. And who is Jameson? And so it's kind of like that, other than the fact that we know Wally at this point isn't necessarily altruistic all the way. I mean, there is an altruistic element, but there's a little bit of a capitalist in him, where he's trying to take care of himself too. Um, so there's a lot of things going on here that pay off, years down the road. I mean, in this issue and years to come. And I really appreciate having joined the book, starting reading regularly around 47, to then when I went back to see where some of those roots got laid down. Despite there being like a crossover right in the middle of it, like, Barron acknowledges, like, okay, there's just so many things going on. And if it's going to get interrupted, at least I appreciate the acknowledgement of it. And, Wally's saying, like, I can't even finish one thing before this other thing comes up. Because now we're juggling, the whole Tina Speed McGee thing. We've got the blue and red Trinity. Now we've got Millennium to deal with, and how Barron brings all these things in together and ties them up really nicely. And I mean, what can I say about Jackson Geiss's art? Like, it's so good. I'm glad that the reverse lightning bolt doesn't bother me like it did like a year ago even. And just some of these splash pages are just, they must have been great to see back then. They certainly look really great now. I mean, I always read like my print copy, and then I'll make notes on, the iPad and look at it that way and see how they change things. And I've got the omnibus too, so no matter what format I'm reading it in, like Geiss's work always just looks, top notch. So that is this issue. Before we move on, I do like to take a look at the letters page. This one's really truncated. It's only one page, and predominantly it's dealing with the annual, which we talked about a few episodes ago. But a few things I want to point out. We have Frank Balkin says that, "Dear Mike, Flash is a great book. The key to this series' appeal is sophistication. Barron creates interesting adversaries with strong motivations. He creates interesting subplots with progress with each issue. I won't mention names, but many highly lauded comic scripters would have Wally, quote, ponder making love to Tina for 3 or 4 issues before anything happened. That's not storytelling. That's filling pages. Geiss's art is sophisticated, clear, and crisp with its own distinct style. Though I've read Wally's 90s, 60s origin, I like to see Barron and Geiss tell it their way. Any chance of seeing that in the near future?" And they reply, "Well, we're talking about a Secret Origins appearance sometime next year." I don't know who he's referring to when he's talking about, the padding out. The first thing that comes to mind is like, the post 2000s era of storytelling, where you have like Brian Michael Bendis, where they were writing for the trade and they're stretching things out for like 6 issues. And I love this arc, so I'm not saying this is a slam against them, but they took like that 15-page story of Amazing Fantasy 15, the origin of Spider-Man, and made it 6 issues. So that was just the first thing that popped into mind. I don't know who he's referring to in 1987 who would do that, but it does speak to the style of comics at the time. Like I mentioned just a moment ago, there were so many subplots that are going into this book right now. And I really feel like I get a full meal when I read one of these issues. We have another letter. The next letter is from Dr. Twist. And I'll just say it right now. The only reply he gets from the editors is Dr. Twist. Yeah. "Dear Mike, I think Speed McGee in Flash number 5 begins a journey on a tightrope for all concerned. What we're dealing with in this story is a moral landscape where there are no simple black and whites of right and wrong, where all the major characters perform actions which can be seen as reprehensible." And then he goes on to talk about, how the law would see Jerry is right because he's trying to get his property. And, Wally is committing adultery, and Tina as well. And but then from a moral standpoint, like, Jerry's not a good guy right now. He's beating his partner, whether there's some ego involved with Tina looking for a younger man. Wally is protecting her from this abusive spouse. So he goes on to talk about the grayness of the situation. "Even when Jerry and Wally meet in battle, as it were, it's not a battle for good nor evil, but a fight between two lovers for a woman. Hardly a justifiable reason to go tearing up the countryside for. Is it love Wally and Tina are fighting for? Or is it simple lust, an older woman seeking the ego gratification of having a lover a decade her junior? A young man just wondering what an older woman is like. They are friends, no doubt, but can they survive as a couple? Is it just sex? Should it just be? Like I said, a tightrope. Wife beating, adultery, jealousy, revenge, possessiveness, lust, and a cat. All this in a comic about a guy who runs fast. Sorry. That's Thea. We have two letters at the end, both dealing with the Flash Annual 1. We have Alan Bernard, who says that I know I sound like I work in the publicity department at DC, but after Watchmen, I would have to say that Flash Annual 1 is the best color comic I've read all year, and I read a lot of comics. So that's really cool. And the last letter is from Richard Myers. Dear Mike, as author of the martial arts movie book From Bruce Lee to the Ninja from Citadel Press, it was a pleasure to see the Flash Annual and a martial arts story that made a clear delineation between Chinese and Japanese skills. I was getting tired of writers who didn't know the difference between kung fu and karate, not to mention Bruce Lee and Sonny Chiba. Naturally, I got the biggest kick out of the cameo appearance of Wang Lungwei, who is actually one of the greatest villains of Chinese action cinema. I was lucky enough to meet him on my visit to Hong Kong last year, and we shared a gracious lunch and dinner. He's directing movies now and revealed that his actual English name is Johnny Wang Lung Bai. In any case, thanks again for the deliberate China influence story and keep up the good work. And it's kind of funny because I actually bought some Shaw Brothers Blu-rays recently from Arrow, and it was a 4-pack that it had 4 movies on it, and one of the movies has this actor in it. And I bought them because it ties in with Kill Bill is coming out, and it ties in with the character of Pai Mei, who went by a slightly different name in the Shaw Brother movies, but it's the same character basically. And so I was just watching some of those, getting excited to see Kill Bill again on the big screen. And then I read this letter. I'm like, oh yeah, I just saw that guy in a movie. Now I need to go back and read that Flash Annual again to see if I can spot it. He just says, any case, thanks again for the deliberate China influence story and keep up the good work. And those are our letters pages. Next time, or next month rather, first check out the 5th part of our weekly miniseries Millennium. Okay, that's not happening. Our saga's action continues over there. Then our story returns to Flash number 9, as Wally's got more unusual family problems and he meets the staggering menace of the Chunk. Chunk is probably very inappropriately named at this point, but he's going to be a major fixture in the book for the next few years. And he even appeared on CW's The Flash Show, except they never called him the Chunk. They went by his normal name of Chester. So Chester P. Runk, Chunk. But that's going to be next time. I really like this issue a lot. I think it's one of the strongest ones we've read so far in this first year. But that is going to do it for this time. We will catch you next month. But now you are up to speed with Wally West. Take care.